Jerusalem Online, I'm Mike Greenspan. While Americans were following news of a U.S. missile strike on Baghdad and pondering the arrest of Islamic fundamentalists accused of plotting to blow up various public buildings in the U.S., Israelis this week have been following an explosion or two of their own. Katyusha rockets came thundering down on the Israeli city of Kiryat Shmona along the border with Lebanon, wounding 2 people and causing extensive property damage. Many residents of Kiryat Shmona spent the next night sleeping in bomb shelters. Hezbollah Islamic fundamentalists based in South Lebanon are suspected in the rocket attack. Less dangerous, but no less explosive, was the political firestorm that erupted here following the announcement of charges against Israel's interior minister for alleged kickbacks and misuse of public funds. The scandal, brewing for years, not only threatened to upset the delicate balance within Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin's fragile coalition government, it also brought to the surface long-suppressed antagonism between Israel's Ashkenazi and Sephardi Jewish communities. We'll define those terms and look into the political cauldron during this week's look at the people and the stories behind the news. What's more, we'll explore the most controversial question to confront Israel in recent years. Does McDonald's have a chip on its shoulder? And we'll sample the exciting tones of an Israeli vocal virtuoso with a remarkable range. But first, Interior Minister Aryeh Deri, the leader of Shas, an ultra-Orthodox religious party, is no stranger to controversy. An accomplished political hand, he's been living under a cloud for almost 3 years since it became known that police were investigating charges he'd misused public funds and accepted kickbacks. Now the case is coming to a head, and perhaps to court. The details in this report from Israel Television.
Aryeh Deri was born in Morocco in 1959. The family came to Israel in the late 60s, and Deri grew up in Bat Yam, near Tel Aviv. He received an ultra-Orthodox education and later went to study in Jerusalem's prestigious Hebron Yeshiva. There he became tutor to the young son of then-Chief Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. In the early 80s, Deri convinced Ovadia Yosef to form a new ultra-Orthodox political party called the Sephardi Torah Guardians, known by the Hebrew acronym Shas. The rise of Shas and Deri was fast. In 1984, Shas entered the Knesset with 4 seats. 2 years later, Deri, at the age of 29, became Director General of the Interior Ministry. In 1986, Deri became head of the party and later Interior Minister under Yitzhak Shamir and later Yitzhak Rabin. But Deri's problems had begun. Allegations of financial misconduct, kickbacks and special favors to Shas religious institutions. For 2 years, Deri chose to remain silent. Then earlier this year, he agreed to cooperate with police investigators. This week, the storm broke. The Attorney General presented Deri with an extensive charge sheet covering bribe-taking, breach of public trust, and fraud. Deri has gone on record that he is ready to resign, but Rabbi Ovadia Yosef insists that his protege remain in the government, and what Rabbi Ovadia says goes. Deri is the politician, but the heart and soul of Shas is Ovadia Yosef. He is considered to be the voice of wisdom and the guiding spirit of the party and its devoted followers. This is Jerusalem's Bukharian quarter, the Shas heartland of the capital. Thank God, says this Shas supporter, we have Rabbi Ovadia. If he would tell us right is left and left is right, we would believe him, and so it would be. At the core of the issue lie difficult questions of the nature of power, its use and abuse. For the Shas faithful, Deri has committed no misdeed. There are some very serious allegations.
These are serious allegations, but you put him on the scale with the good things that he does, and he'll go to heaven before all the rest, Rabin and everyone else.
While Aryeh Deri's political future hangs in the balance, hardcore Shas supporters reject almost all the charges against him. For them, Aryeh Deri and his religious mentor, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, have literally changed their lives. This is Steve Edwards for IBA News.
Israeli Interior Minister Aryeh Deri under fire. A closer look at the social hornet's nest stirred up by the Deri affair when Jerusalem Online continues. Jerusalem Online continues now. Israel is very young as countries go, just 45 years old, with a very small population, just over 5 million. As a result, it's easy to trace the development of social phenomena here. It's a social test tube, if you will. This week, the test tube was all astir as the case surrounding Israeli Interior Minister Aryeh Deri came to a head. Deri is a Sephardi Jew. The term denotes Jews hailing from Middle Eastern or North African backgrounds. And while Sephardim now constitute a majority of Israelis, Many still harbor resentment for what they consider years of mistreatment and discrimination at the hands of the country's largely Ashkenazi, or European, political and economic establishment. Some labeled the prosecution of Deri a political witch hunt based solely on his background. Is the prejudice real or imagined? And how does a country like Israel, made up of so many disparate ethnic groupings, go about molding itself into a coherent nation? Those questions are at the top of my list for Israel's Minister of Economy and Planning, Professor Shimon Shitrit. Welcome, Professor. Do political and economic prejudice against Sephardi Jews really exist in this country?
There is a very interesting situation here because the Sephardim are in fact a majority, but we can call them numerical majority but substantive minority.
What does that mean?
That means it's the same problem that women have. They are in fact half of the population, but nevertheless, if they get a job, they have to prove themselves. They have to be much better than a male officer. And the same thing happens with the people from North Africa, from Asia. There is a general prejudice that people make it as based on the fact that it is more efficient to assume that if you belong to a group that is educated, you yourself should be more successful in your job. On the other hand, if you belong to a group which is, as a group, less educated, then you yourself also are less successful.
Now, obviously, if that's the case, you may be the exception to the rule. You've reached high public office and high academic positions as well. But you yourself are from a Sephardi background. If I'm not mistaken, you were born in Morocco and came here at an early age. Do you sense that the social and economic barriers that were so distinct in the past are withering away, or are they still there and still problematic?
I think that in politics we have removed almost all barriers because almost every office has been already occupied by people from Sephardi origin. We had the President of the State, we had Minister of Finance, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Justice, Secretary General of the Histadrut. On the professional level, in the army, we have broken that barrier. We had already a chief of staff who was Moshe Levi, from a Sephardi background. But the professional elite, in all walks of life, it is not. We have not reached what I can call breaking this barrier.
When the State of Israel was established, the Founding Fathers envisioned a classless society here, and obviously, like in most places in the world, things didn't work out that way. You have the rich who get richer and the poor who often get poorer. What can be done to attack what may be the real distinguishing factor between people who feel treated well and treated poorly, and that's the economic factor?
Well, first of all, there is the general policy of taxation, of social allowance, of making a better system in education. This is the state responsibility, and that's the level of the state. But there is much to be done on the voluntary, on the community level. And I believe that community level is perhaps very, very important, particularly for those enclaves that needs encouragement, that needs promotion, that needs support. And therefore we initiated a project which is called Operation Social Development. We want to involve the business community as a practicing of their social responsibility, not as a tzedakah, not as a hesed, grace, but rather as a duty on their part to contribute to their environment, to contribute to their community.
I understand you wouldn't mind if foreign businessmen were involved in this as well.
We intend that the counterparts of the Israeli business leaders will be supporters of Israel from among the Jewish people who are already in a tradition, in a culture that is operating that way, and they can bring in their culture and their experience and help us do it. And I think this is a way how we can move to bridge the gaps of the economic gaps, the social gaps, and perhaps this is a way to use a mechanism to try to bring more people to the professional elites from among the weaker groups, Ashkenazi and Sephardi.
It sounds like an enterprising idea in every sense of the word. Professor Shimon Shitrit, Israel's Minister of Economy and Planning, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And when we continue, well, you've heard of the Cola Wars. Get ready for the Potato Wars right after this.
I'm Carolyn Benetton. Environmental concerns for Jerusalem air surface this week. A research study shows pollution from industrial areas along the coast is beginning to threaten Jerusalem's skies. Adding Jerusalem's growing car traffic, plus its strong sunlight, experts are sounding health alarms for city residents. Professionals caution if the city does not adopt strong anti-pollution measures, then in several years Jerusalem could resemble highly polluted Mexico City. In entertainment news, Israeli hard rock bands can't believe their luck this summer. Two of the world's greatest hard rock bands performing within 1 month. Metallica will be on stage this week, following in the footsteps of Guns N' Roses. Metallica has been on the road for almost 2 years and plans on arriving in Israel a few days early to do some sightseeing. And if movies are more to your liking, the Jerusalem Film Festival opening promises to be the most glamorous yet. Guest of honor Robert De Niro leads a list of celebrities, and a guaranteed sold-out event will be the festival's opening night screening of Kenneth Branagh's recent film adaptation of Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing. And Mr. De Niro will also be the guest of honor at the 14th Maccabiah Games. The Games, also known as the Jewish Olympics, are staged every 4 years. Chairman Ephraim Atlas says this year's competition will be on the highest competitive level yet, due to the appearance of thousands of athletes trained in the former Soviet Union. And the 400-strong contingent from South Africa will be competing for the first time officially as South Africans. The Jurassic Park Dinosaur Rage has arrived in Israel. The Eretz Israel Museum will be exhibiting a working, full-scale, computer-controlled display of very realistic-looking dinosaurs. The exhibit is on loan from the Natural History Museum in London and will surely be a must-see for kids of all ages during the summer. And also just in time for the summer, Israel's version of Universal Studios opened this week. Globus Land, located at Globus Group Studios outside of Jerusalem, will feature a western town with gunfighters, army campsites, and fairy tale land. The adventure park will be open daily, and lines are already forming. I'm Carolyn Benetton for Jerusalem Online.
We continue now. Just in time for the 4th of July, and after years of waiting and numerous false alarms, McDonald's is coming to Israel. The first golden arches will sprout a couple of months from now in Tel Aviv, and unless Israelis are abnormal, it won't be long until Big Mac becomes a permanent part of the Hebrew language. McDonald's premiere in Israel was in doubt, however, after the hamburger giant found fault with Israeli spuds and wanted to import its own French fries. Joining me now is the management representative of McDonald's Israel, Eitan Bar-Zeev. Welcome, Eitan.
Thank you.
What was the problem with those fries?
Well, McDonald's specification calls for certain French fries which couldn't have been produced in Israel.
The Israelis weren't growing the right kind of potatoes?
Not the right kind of potatoes, not the right kind of line to produce and process those potatoes to the specification of McDonald's.
So when that first restaurant opens in Ramat Gan a little while from now, whose fries are we going to see alongside those Big Macs and triple thick shakes?
Probably imported fries at the first stage, and about 6 to 12 months from now, locally made fries.
You got the Israelis to grow the kind of potatoes you want?
We got an agreement with a group of Israelis to produce, to create a line which will process the French fries, and an agreement with the agricultural segment that they will supply the right kind of potatoes.
Okay, so that's one major problem that was solved, but there are a few others, and here's one of them. Omri, the tray, please. Now, this problem is called Israeli hamburgers. Israelis are not unaccustomed to eating hamburgers. There are a couple of local chains that have been in the market for a few years. They're doing pretty well. There's the Burger Ranch chain, home of the Ranch Burger, and there is McDavid's, notice a similar name, and they make the Big McDavid, I think it's called. I think there was even a legal battle once between McDonald's and McDavid's. So there's competition here. Now, I know Wendy's tried to come into the Israeli marketplace, and it flopped. I don't know if this is what beat Wendy's or whether it was this that beat Wendy's. Israel's own fast food.
Falafel.
Now, Israelis have been eating things like this, falafel and pita, for years, and this is the Israeli fast food. Maybe this is what made Wendy's fail. How is McDonald's going to deal with competition like this?
Well, McDonald's doesn't see this as its direct competition. Obviously, Israelis are going to continue to eat falafel. What we predict is that Israeli will also eat McDonald's hamburger.
Now, when they go to eat a McDonald's hamburger, some of them will be asking, what about a McDonald's cheeseburger? How can you make a kosher cheeseburger?
There is no way to make kosher cheeseburgers, but cheeseburgers will be sold at McDonald's.
In other words, the chain will not be kosher in Israel.
I would say that the initial stores of the chain are not going to be kosher. Kosher branches may be considered at a later stage.
Okay. So how long is it going to be, Eitan, until we see golden arches from one end of Israel to the other and signs, billions of burgers sold in the Promised Land?
Well, the initial step or initial process is going to take until the end of 1997. We plan to open some 20 to 30 branches in Israel, and
that's a lot of burgers.
That is the current plan today for the initial phase.
Now, I think that the French in Paris, at the McDonald's branch in Paris, call it a Big Mac. What's it going to be called here?
Big Mac.
Just Big Mac?
Just Big Mac.
Maybe
same name.
Big Mac? Something like that. Okay, it works.
Pronunciation is open to the public.
Eitan Bar-Zeev, representing McDonald's. Good luck in Israel, and we'll look for those golden arches.
Thank you very much.
And if you like that, you'll no doubt like this. In a few months from now, McDonald's will be followed by Kentucky Fried Chicken right here in Israel. Yum, yum. Meanwhile, in our POB this week, a response to our recent show on Israelis returning home after years living abroad. Yehoshua ben Abraham faxed us from Chicago. We're an Israeli family, he writes, pursuing studies here, and we hope to be back by the end of this year. Our oldest is leaving for the Army within a month. Keep up the good work. Many of us are literally starved for news from home. It's also great that other Jews and non-Jews see what's happening in Israel today. Yehoshua also asked for a copy of the Ministry of Absorption's special booklet for returning Israelis, Waiting for You at Home. Looks like this. In Hebrew, it's called Mitzapim Lecha B'Bayit, and you can receive your very own copy of it by writing to us here at Jerusalem Online. Mitzapim Lecha B'Bayit. Address your comments, questions, and suggestions to Jerusalem Online, to our POB. Here's the address. Jerusalem Online, POB 33003, Jerusalem, Israel. That's Jerusalem Online, POB 33003, in Jerusalem. Or fax us at country code 972-2381658. That's 972-2381658. And stay with us. Before I tell you to stay with us, let me remind you. Tell us when and on what station you watch Jerusalem Online. Now do stay with us because you'll make the acquaintance of a truly heavenly Israeli voice right after this. We're back. Singers come and go, and Israel has many very good ones. But the singer you're about to see is unique. His tonal range is unlike any you're likely to hear except perhaps in a very classical concert hall. Meet David Do'o. Welcome, David.
Hi.
And before we get into your music, why don't we sample some of it? Watch David's clip, Ani Af Isor, David Do'o.
בכל פעם שאני אוהב אותך, אני
David Do'Or, just a small sample of your latest single, Ani Af, I'm Soaring. From here, and it's hot off the presses from your new disc and album, David Do'Or, Bagova Mishtaneh, Changing Altitudes or Changing Heights, out on the Head Artsy label here in Israel. That's great.
Thank you.
This is your second album.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, no one had ever heard of you. Where'd you come from?
A year ago.
So?
A year ago, I released my first album, and it was a success in Israel. And now it's my second one, and everybody knows me.
David, one of the things that makes you stand out among Israeli singers is this incredible vocal range. It was only hinted at in Ani Af. I want to hear the real thing now. Show me how high you can go.
Okay, I'll sing something from my first album.
Okay. Live and in person.
Voice from the Sky, that's the name.
Live. This is not a playback.
Okay, I'll try.
Makes the hairs on the back, on my back, stand up. That's called contratenor, that voice, and it's from a song called Heavenly Voice, Kol Mi Hashamayim. How did you discover you could go so high?
I discovered it only, I always knew that I can sing like that, but I discovered it, as a singer only 3 years ago. I began to study in the Music Academy in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's classical music.
Classical music, yeah. And then I discovered all the world of the Baroque and the Renaissance periods, which in that time contratenors were very famous.
And madrigals.
Yeah.
Right. Did people ever think you were kind of freaky when you sang that way?
I don't know. I must say that at first, before I released my first album, I was kind of scared. I didn't know what people will say about
Well, you shouldn't be scared anymore because...
So after I saw the reaction, then now I'm much more comfortable.
Well, it's given you a double career, too, because in addition to your pop releases, you do a lot of classical work, right?
Yeah, I'm working on my classic album now.
You perform with big orchestras, symphonies sometimes?
Sometimes, yeah.
I've heard you live. I'm trying to act like someone who hasn't heard your work, and I am terribly impressed and wish you lots of luck. And I just want to know one thing.
Thank you.
When are our friends overseas going to get a chance to see you live and in person? Are you going to travel?
Yeah, I hope quite soon. I'm working on it now.
Great. David Do'Or, a very unique Israeli voice. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
The startling voice of David Do'Or. It wraps up this week's look at the people and the stories behind the news from Israel. Say that fast 10 times. Join me again next week right here on Jerusalem Online. I'm Mike Greenspan. Shalom. Great. Great.